Great. Okay, hello and welcome to this edition of Office Hours with Stitchcraft Marketing. I'm Flossie Arend, one of the account managers at Stitchcraft Marketing, and I'm joined by my colleague, Rebecca Hubin. We created our monthly office hours as a way to share our insights on important topics and to give our community an opportunity to ask us questions. I have a 10 to 15-minute presentation up top, and at the end, I'll open up the floor. But you can always drop questions into the chat about the topic at hand or anything else that comes to mind as we're talking. If you're comfortable, I'd love for you to introduce yourselves in chat, and you can share your name and a little bit about your craft business. Today's presentation is built on a blog post that we released earlier this month on our predictions for hot crafting trends of 2025. So attendees to our previous trends presentations will recognize some familiar standout trends from years past. Eco-friendly crafting remains popular, and it features in 3 of the craft trends that we'll talk about today. Crafters continue to engage with visible mending and are seeking ways to use even the smallest scraps, which we feel reflects both an interest in sustainability as well as a desire to mitigate some of this economic anxiety around wasteful spending. When we looked at TikTok, the TikTok crowd, in previous years, they fell hard for crafts like candle painting. And in 2025, that love affair continues with glassware and watercolors. In the world of knitting and crochet, bold, bright colorwork and deeply textured knits have risen to the forefront. And finally, a familiar favorite from our 2024 trend predictions, craft kits remain a powerful tool for introducing crafters to new hobbies. So our first trend that we're going to talk about is upcycled sewing. This is about giving recycled textiles new life as garments and accessories. The upcycled sewing trend exemplifies crafters' desires to engage in sustainability and mindful crafting. And as I said, I think it points to a growing consumer trend amid rising costs and a stagnating economy. Thriftiness has become an enduring motto for many sewists who are turning to secondhand shops, thrift stores, and their own closets to source materials that they can repurpose into garments and accessories. And all materials feel welcome here. We've seen everything from curtains to napkins, doilies, tablecloths, bed sheets, and a lot more used in combination to make new garments. You can see on the right here, this is a baby doll dress from Selena Sanders. She made it with both tea towels and tablecloths. This trend offers crafters a means for creating truly unique, one-of-a-kind pieces, and they showcase sewists' creativity and imaginations. I think part of the allure is creating a covetable dress and then revealing you made it with old bed sheets. For quilt and sewing retailers, we would recommend leaning into the trend with classes that help crafters learn how to reimagine and repurpose materials to create unique garments. So here are some fun examples we found of the upcycled sewing trend. On the left, we have Sewing Rachel. She almost exclusively creates and shares photos of her upcycling projects on Instagram. This is a pajama set that she made from a cotton duvet cover. She works with really unexpected materials. She recently posted these really beautiful vests and coats that she made from brocade curtain samples. You can check her out on Instagram. Next, in the middle is a slouch kimono that is sewn from various silk scarves. It's made by Recycled Sewing Studio, which is a sewing shop in Australia that focuses on teaching sewists upcycling skills and helping sewists lean into vintage upcycling. And then finally on the right, we have a thrifted jacket that has been turned into a fanny pack by Kelly Dempsey on Instagram. Kelly works solely on transforming thrifted sweaters and textiles into new pieces. She takes you from beginning to end, finding the piece in the thrift shop and then turning it into something new. And the strap for the bag was also thrifted. It was originally a leopard pattern belt. So our next trend that is also falling into upcycling talks about decorative mending. Now, visible mending has trended for several years now, but its popularity was mostly relegated to the realm of knitting, sewing, and embroidery. It remains popular in those spaces, and it continues the focus on sustainability. Crafters are opting to mend worn items rather than toss them out. but it's also becoming far more decorative, hence our updating the term to decorative mending. Decorative mending feels like a dedicated practice for transforming well-loved items into unique, beautiful pieces, where the mending feels less like an afterthought and more like the focus of the project. Visible mending is also creeping into other craft spaces. Artistic pursuits like kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of mending cracked pottery and ceramics with lacquer and gold dust, now join the visible mending trend in the crafting community. Pottery studios are now beginning to include kintsugi classes to teach ceramicists how to repair broken pottery with the technique. And we just learned that the month of March celebrates the art of visible mending with the hashtag #MendMarch. According to Visible Mend on Instagram, which is where this image came from, Mend March 25 is, quote, a party where we all mend to the word of the day and share. The event includes all crafters, whether you knit, crochet, weave, quilt, sew, or make pottery or ceramics. So here we have some examples of decorative mending. On the left, we have some patchwork pants by Gaudy Grandma on Instagram. And then next, we have some mending on jeans by Alex Onver on Instagram. They actually use a speed weave device that they also sell to create these complex woven designs for very decorative mending. Next is a mended plate by Carrington Davies on Instagram. She's an artist who had an exhibition in the fall featuring visible mending in both textiles and ceramics. And then finally on the right, extreme right, we have a mended coat by Meta Stroiken. Her Instagram posts always end with the words repair, reuse, reinvent in all caps. And then it's time for a craft revolution. She has a new book called Stitch coming out in fall 2025, and it contains insights into and examples of her decorative mending techniques, which are really beautiful. So our next trend in eco-friendly crafting is maximizing scraps. And the maximizing scraps trend is found with knitters, crocheters, sewists, quilters. They're all opting to make use of their scraps rather than let them languish in their stash. We've noticed the scraps getting smaller and smaller for this trend as crafters devote more energy into making more with less. This also ties in with the upcycled sewing trend. We've seen lots of sewists save bits of trim or try to use selvages in novel ways. This trend offers craft businesses another opportunity to create educational offerings or communal experiences around scrap use. Right here, you can see a recent class that our quilt shop client Thimbles just offered on improvisational piecing. It was all about creating improvised blocks of fabric using only the scraps you have in your stash. So teaching techniques that quilters can take with them moving forward so that they can make better use of their scrap stash in future projects. We love this class idea because it acknowledges the trend, leans into it, and then positions Thimbles as an educational resource that wants to empower their quilters with new skills. So for the maximizing scraps trend, on the left we have Bluebell Hill Crafts on Instagram, who posted this crumb quilting technique, which involves grouping and sewing together various scrap fabrics of all sizes to create one piece of fabric. Crumb quilting is definitely on the rise among eco-friendly motivated quilters, so quilt shops should keep that in mind when they devise classes for quilters this year. Next, we have Katie Banks. She designed a modular book blanket that invites knitters to use scraps that reflect the colors of books they've read, much like a temperature scarf. And you can see that some of these scraps are really small, like they only account for maybe one row of knitting. Next, we have Lori Springer on Instagram. She posts a lot of scrap quilt projects. She actually keeps a bin of fabric scraps of all sizes left over from quilting and crumb quilts them into bags, Christmas stockings, coasters, and other items. And then finally, on the extreme right, we have Erika Wright. She designed this crocheted scrap weave blanket to use up yarn scraps, and the pattern actually allows crocheters to incorporate yarns of all different weights into one blanket. I also want to mention that just yesterday I noticed on Ravelry Lane Publishing, which publishes those really popular 52 weeks of pattern collections. They do 52 weeks of socks, 52 weeks of shawls. They've done them year after year. They just announced a 52 weeks of scrap yarn pattern collection that is releasing next month. I just saw all the patterns pop up on Ravelry. You can go check them out, but they are really beautiful. A lot of them have embroidery. It's worth checking out. So our next trend, which is in knitting and crochet, is colorwork and texture knits. Colorwork, texture, and knitwear that combines the two is really popular in the knit and crochet worlds right now. With colorwork, we're seeing lots of bold, bright color pairings, which uphold a trend we highlighted in the fall that focused on 70s color schemes. All colorwork techniques feel represented here, whether it's striping, color blocking, mosaic, intarsia, or stranded colorwork. You can see here a picture from Pom Pom Publications Winter Spring 2025. The whole offering that they had for this collection is full of colorwork as well as texture designs. There's cables, lace, ribbing, there's embroidered details like in that blue sweater. It's all throughout the collection. And actually the featured yarn for the collection, it's made of a tubular cotton containing blown alpaca fibers, so it feels like it was really made for highlighting texture. Techniques like colorwork, cabling, and lace can feel daunting to newer knitters and crocheters, so we would encourage yarn shops to think about how they can lean into this trend with educational and project classes. Knit-alongs and crochet-alongs also offer, they also offer an opportunity to kind of lean into the trend, and we'll talk about creating kits around that in the next trend that we talk about. So here are some examples of colorwork and textured knits. First on the left, we have the Moon Mint Sweater by Andrea Mowry. It's knit in 2 colors in a slip stitch pattern that creates this overall plaid color effect. The slip stitch pattern features both stockinette and garter, so it's also highly textural. Next, we have Crochet Foundry's January 2025 issue. It featured lots of color blocking with bright pops of color. Everything in the issue had bright pops of color. After that is the Accidentally in Love shawl by Melanie Berg. That features 3 red hues and slip stitches to create this overall honeycomb pattern effect. And then finally, on the extreme right, we have the Dunes Tunisian cardigan from Inside Crochet January 2025. There are 18 patterns in this issue and 15 of them featured colorwork. So that should kind of tell you that colorwork is a very hot technique right now. So craft kits are back. We said it last year and we're saying it again. Craft kits are huge. Now is the time to create kits if you haven't done so already. Craft kits are so alluring because they're like Lunchables for hungry crafters. You get everything you need to make a single project all in one box. We're living in the age of the multi-crafter. Crafters want to engage in multiple crafts, but they can feel intimidated by having to purchase multiple different pieces to complete projects. Kits provide this approachable entry point for creatives to try something new, and many of these kits focus on beginner level projects. For craft retailers, kits can open up opportunities to engage with other small businesses, engage with influencers that already offer kits, or you can create unique kits of your own that feature your products and your patterns. This is another chance to lean into make-alongs and also teach new skills. Touching on some of the previous trends we spoke about, consider making a kit for beginners to colorwork or decorative mending or crumb quilting. So these are some craft kits that we've seen recently. On the left, our client, Brown Sheep Company, recently introduced these needle felting kits that are aimed at beginners to needle felting. They feature 4 different seasonal designs, and each kit includes Brown Sheep's wool fibers, needle felting needles, embroidery floss, and the felt base. Then at the top middle, we have an embroidery doll kit from Kuriki Press. It includes screen printed fabric, needle, backing fabric, embroidery floss, stuffing, everything you need. Below that is a temperature dishcloth kit for a knit along hosted by Little Red Mitten. This leans into the colorwork trend as well. And then finally on the right, we have embroidery kits from Sublime Stitching, and that has embroidery floss, hoop, canvas, needle, and multiple designs that can be personalized to create a unique piece. So now we're moving into some TikTok trends, and we hit watercolor painting, which has exploded on TikTok. Like lots of TikTok craft trends, we think its popularity is tied to the fact that it's beginner friendly, It's relatively mistake-proof and it's inexpensive. Watercolor paints are also fast drying and portable. They dry quickly in the pan and they easily reactivate with just water. The fluidity of watercolor invites experimentation. Watercolor designs don't have to be exact, so the technique doesn't just hide imperfections, it upholds them. Many of the most popular watercolor videos on TikTok feature floral or geometric designs. And this is another TikTok trend that we feel leans into that communal paint party trend that we saw with candle painting in 2024. So you can see here much of watercolor on TikTok focuses on florals. We have on the left these watercolor flowers by Spicing Colors on TikTok. Then we have this watercolor geometric design by Lizzie Phoenix on TikTok. There's a watercolor bookmark by Lil and E on TikTok. And then finally on the right, this sort of almost abstract watercolor florals by Color Me Water on Instagram. So our final craft trend of 2025 is also from TikTok, where crafters really seem to love painting. In this case, TikTokers are focusing on glass painting, whether it's a drinking glass, a vase, a jar, or just a plane of glass. Lots of crafters are opting to paint on glassware that they find at thrift shops and secondhand stores, so technically this could also fall under the header of upcycling. There are two different but related methods for this trend. With the first method, crafters are using acrylic glass paint to paint glass containers. And then the second method attempts to duplicate the effect of stained glass. Using black Sharpies or black gallery glass paint, crafters place a simple design underneath the glass and then they trace the outlines and then fill them with color. Because crafters can trace their designs, the results are often fairly sophisticated regardless of experience. Most of the designs that we've seen on TikTok are focused on anime characters with some floral designs sprinkled throughout. Okay. I think those should have started playing right away. Good. So the first example on the left is a faux stained glass piece by N On's World on TikTok. Then we have this painted vase by Foxglove and Poppy on Instagram. Next is another faux stained glass piece by Marley Makes Things on TikTok. And then finally on the right, we have a glass painting by Our Bigger Bear on TikTok. And you can notice that the piece on the extreme left by NH On's World and the piece on the extreme right by Our Bigger Bear were both traced first. One used acrylic paint and the other used a Sharpie. And I can play that again just so you can see it again. But you can see how easy it is to make these with just acrylic paint and in some cases just a Sharpie. It's like a very, very easy, fun. Another thing that I think would probably invite crafters to have like paint parties and things like that around it. Okay, that wraps up our office hours, highlighting our craft trends that we're watching for in 2025. So I can open up the floor to questions now if there are any.